Good evening, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and call today's August 15th meeting of the School Building Committee to order. The time is 5:07 p.m. And we'll start with a roll call. Mr. Allville? Here. Mr. Devon?
Here. Chairwoman
Heger? Here. President Hume? Oh my goodness, my apologies, Councillor Hume. Mayor Kokoris?
Here.
Superintendent Lee? Mr. Spellman are absent, and Ms. Sichello is also unable to make it, and I am here. My apologies. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from our last meeting, which was July 11th, 2022. Everybody should have received a copy of these and had an opportunity to review them. Any discussion or concern about the minutes? Okay. So it was pointed out earlier that on this page 2 of 3 under new membership, there is a paragraph that is duplicated. So I'm going to suggest that we remove that. And with that revision, we'll be looking for a motion to approve the minutes of July 11th.
So moved.
Been a motion made and a second. Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Great. Thank you. If you weren't here, right? 4. It's four in favor, yeah, and 1 abstention. I think Mr. Devon was also absent at the last meeting, so he's unable to vote on those as well. And the next item on the agenda is the South Middle School update, but if there are no objections, we'll go ahead and take the accelerated repair project out of order. We do have representatives with us today from our owner's project manager, Brian LaRoche, and the team with an update on the schematic design for the roof repair at Flaherty and at Hollis. So if there are no objections, we'll move to that item on the agenda first. Great, thank you. Great, thank you, Brian.
Yes, good evening, everybody. Brian LaRoche with PCA 360, the OPM on the Flaherty and the Hollis roof replacement projects. Tonight I have with me Diane, how do you say last name? Azelius from BWA Architecture. So we're just going to give you a presentation tonight on the schematic design for the project, which was just recently completed in the last week. So we'll go over schedule, budget, some of the scope on the projects. I know you have a few other roof projects already ahead of us, so we won't get into too much of the technical, keep it pretty high level. But if you have any questions, you want to learn more, just let me know, and we're happy to dive in a little deeper. So the schedule and timeline in your presentation, in the packet there, a few pages in, you'll find a schedule that looks similar to the one in the bottom left corner here. But generally speaking, on this, I've simplified the schedule for you. We're at the point now where we're at the end of schematic design. We need the approval to proceed with the scope for the project. And once we have that, on September 1st, we'll be submitting the package formally to the MSBA. The MSBA is going to take a little bit more than a month to review the schematic design package. And once internally they've accepted it, they'll send it up to the board for a vote, which is in mid-October. And then with the MSBA board vote, they send it back to the town for an appropriation of funds for the project, and then that would allow us to move forward with the design. So we're really at the beginning of the design right now. And then construction period, I just wanted to highlight this a little bit. Right now, with the timeline, the way things are going, with the timing of the MSBA meeting, and when we received our assignment, we're running a little bit late for summertime. We'll certainly do our best to accelerate at any opportunity to move the project up. But right now, with materials the way they are, roofing materials are running between 16 and 18 weeks. We hope that's going to improve between now and next summer. And certainly if it does, we'll be able to move up the timeline. But for now, it looks like it's going to be a project that will start in September while the school's going in. So I know that's not ideal, but it is possible. We can do that. So this is just, you've already been through this with the MSBA. You're pretty well-versed in their process, but we're Module 4 for schematic design. This is their timeline. I won't get into too much of the detail. I mentioned before, our next step is to get this to the MSBA by September 1st. So the school project here at Flaherty, I'm going to have Diane present a little bit on the scope, but generally speaking, 43,000 square foot roof. It's almost all EPDM roof. The roof areas are a little over 30 years old. The one piece, Building B, has an asphalt roof, but they're all used. They've completed their useful life and ready for replacement. So with that, I'll turn it over to Diane.
Okay, thank you. So I just wanted to walk you through briefly, as Brian said, the roofing system is out beyond its useful life. Generally speaking, they have 2.5 inches of insulation on it, which we would have to increase in order to meet the current code requirements for insulating to R30. That would be a part of the new work. These have wood deck, 2.5-inch insulation, a cover board, wood fiber cover board, and then the EPDM system on top of that. So if that is removed, our structural engineer says that will keep us in the range of the structural capabilities of the building, so we won't need to do substantial structural work where the deck is worn. We didn't see a lot of that. There is one place in particular where the deck has deteriorated. There will be an allowance in the project for replacing any worn deck that is encountered. Similarly, with the additional insulation, the other issue is raising everything up to the newer height so that all of the base flashings and the roof fence and the curbs underneath equipment would be high enough to be up above the roofing membrane in case of snow or driving rain, that kind of thing. So there's work in there to do that. As far as the roof surface itself, not only is it leaking, but there's some areas of ponding, so we're suggesting that those limited areas of ponding be built up with a lightweight concrete, which is within the structural capabilities of the building, to flatten that out more so that we'll have positive drainage of roof rainwater to the roof drains. As far as the mechanical, let me do the roof edge itself. That metal would be replaced, built up wood blocking at the perimeter of the building to get it up to the height of the insulation, and then new roof metal around the perimeter. The asphalt roof areas, which are the slope area on the front, area B, I think it is, that has its insulation down in the rafters underneath. So that would be underlayment and then the asphalt shingles themselves, which is pretty conventional. Moving on to the mechanical equipment elements on the roof drains really should be replaced, the roof drain body and the basket on top, and then extended up slightly to get them at the right height for the new insulation. The plumbing vents on the roof need to be extended up slightly to make sure they're 18 inches off the deck. And most of the equipment mechanical equipment on the roof is roof fans, vent fans, ventilation fans. There is one mechanical unit that's associated with the end of the left-hand side classroom wing where there was an addition. There is one mechanical unit up there. The read on that is it's still functional. It does need to be unhooked, put on a higher curb, and then reinstalled. And the only comment on that was that if that should get replaced, it would be a good idea because it uses older refrigerants that are no longer acceptable to the newer regulations. So at some point, those refrigerants will be harder to obtain and use when you recharge the system. Let's see, as far as the roof vent fans go, they're all outdated and really should be replaced, so that's been included in the scope of the work. So as long as they were going to get uninstalled and then reinstalled on curbs, we think you should go ahead and replace them. There are a few gutters and downspouts on the project, particularly at the sloped roofs. Those would be replaced. There are some snow slide guards on the playroom by the entrance. Those will be put back in new ones will be put back in after the re-roofing. And there is a requirement to have fall protection at any equipment that's within 10 feet of the roof edge. So that happens in like 2 places, so it's not a lot of, but a little bit of that does happen. The one mechanical unit on the roof has gas piping to it from the front of the building all the way down to the far end of that left-hand wing. That gas piping needs to be scraped and painted. There's an alternate in there for maybe eliminating all that run on the roof and bringing in a separate service down closer to the end of that building, which we think makes sense. So we can get into more detail on that, but that is included as an alternate in the pricing, just to eliminate that instead of having to re-support it. I forget. This building's pretty low, so we're not going to do much in the way of roof ladders because we're a little concerned about people getting up there and who are not allowed to or not. Let's see. That's the main scope of the siding. There's some details with old cables to be removed, and I guess another thing I just want to mention is the soffits on the building. Let's see if that, I guess you can see that. This is pretty small, but there's like an overhang on the building on the flat roofs. And the underside of that is just a like wood deck in the end of the rafters that you can see from underneath that are just painted. There's a lot of peeling paint and so forth. We think it might be useful to clean that up a bit and put a soffit underneath of that so that that's less exposed to the weather for the future, and it cleans that up. So that's been included. So that's the main part of the scope in there. Do you want to get into the ADA? Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. Are there any questions on the scope before I turn it over to take it over from Diane?
Yeah, Mr. Alva?
Insulation?
Yeah.
I understand you're going to insulate the entire flat roof area
Correct.
up to code requirements?
Right.
Okay. What did you mention about the sloping roofs?
The sloping roofs have, underneath the deck, you have the sloping rafters. They have bad insulation up inside of those rafters. So we need to recheck if that gets us all the way to R30. We may have to add some insulation in the floor of the attic. It's like an open attic up there to supplement that to get to the R30. And
Would you look at adding ridge insulation on top of that slope?
we can do that as well. It wasn't written up in this way, but that might be a good idea to get it all up on the top because that's our best point, and then
Yeah, then you'll have a good envelope.
exactly.
Yeah.
The other thing, I'm sorry, I didn't say was that this is planned to be a PVC roof, a 60 mil, which should give you a 20 to 25-year warranty with an edge metal. We'll use the prefabricated edge metal, which gets you the better warranty on that. It's pretty typical, I'm sure, for your other projects.
And are you planning to put asphalt shingles back on the slope roof?
Yes.
Okay.
The interesting thing is I'm taking over from my colleague tonight, and I'm not positive what the slope is on this roof. It is, yeah. They do have EPDM on that roof on the right-hand side, so we will go back with the same system that they have now. I'm not sure if keeping the shingles on the small, I think it's like over the kindergarten area, if that's more of a visual statement, because you can see that pretty well from the road while the other one is N2. But either system should be durable, I think, for the longevity, for the next 20, 30 years.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Mr. Devon?
All of it. Are you going to have ridge vents on the asphalt shingle sides? How are you ventilating that?
It depends on if we do put more insulation on top, we probably won't, we probably would go with more of a closed warm roof. If we maintain the attic ventilation, then we would do ridge vents. So I think maybe we just need to talk about whether that's going to be conditioned space underneath there or not, because we wouldn't vent if it was. If it's not conditioned space, we would.
Is there a type of shingle you're looking at?
Not yet, but we generally go with, the very highest, one of the highest level shingles, so that the heavier weight shingles, they just last longer, they don't burn out as much, because it gets pretty hot up there, and they just kind of dry out over time. So pretty much the standard is a pretty high-level shingle. And then, I don't know if this roof has a big expression of what it looks like, but we can get them to look like slates or something
Just
like
about
that.
anything, yeah. I'm
Yeah,
familiar
if
with
you
it.
want. So I think we get up into the price range, and then we can talk about what we think would like it to look like.
I know from personal experience, putting some shingles on that they said were 30-year guarantee. I mean, what was it, a GAF, architectural? You get a 30-year warranty on it, and we know that they're lasting longer than that. So what they've done is, what used to be their 50-year is now their 60. What used to be their 30 is now.
Well, that's
they've
my
moved-
point is like, I haven't looked at a particular shingle for this project, but a lot of them are 50-year right now, and I don't know if they really last that long, but it means they last at least the 30 years that you really need to get out of them.
Exactly. But, I mean, the biggest problem is, one, making sure that the first 5 or 6 feet, putting your ice and water shield on, if there's any potential ice dams, and putting on the ridge vents to ensure that you ventilate correctly so that you don't wind up cooking the shingle right off the deck.
Exactly.
So, but if you're looking towards what Mr. Orville says as far as putting some type of insulation board on the deck, I think it negates the need for that. But is that something you'll come back to us with?
Yeah, I think if we did that, we might look at having a cross-vented insulation that has a cross-vented space underneath of it, so
Yeah,
that
you
you
can
have a
put
nailable
pans.
surface, but you have venting like right underneath
Yeah,
the
you got the
plywood.
pans that you can staple in.
Well, not so
They
much,
make- they make 'em out of
actually,
plastic.
I've seen that as well, but I
Right.
think in this case, if we're doing rigid, you'd get a composite board
Okay,
that has the insulation on the bottom, that has like a nailer that's discontinuous.
Sure.
Not a nailer, but a strip, and then the nail board goes on top of that, and then that allows it to vent right underneath the plywood
and that will
nailable.
take your venting from your soffit all the way up through to your ridge venting.
Correct, and then you would have a ridge vent and a soffit vent, so.
I think that, shall we say, to cut to the quick, I like shingle roofs. I think they last longer than your sheet good roofs. I do believe that. But they have to be installed correctly or they're just as bad.
Yeah, no, it's a good point that if we can keep them a little cooler, they will last longer. So that's definitely true.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Counselor Hume?
Do you know how many test cuts were done? It references various
Two or
ones.
three, I think,
Okay.
because they also went through a couple of different areas.
There was at least one test cut on each.
One on each roof, Brian's
One on each
correcting me.
roof?
Yeah.
Any issues where, like a year from now, because it's not going to take place till a year from, like, next month? Patch job will be fine
No, I
for
mean,
the next year?
those test cuts are done by trained roofers who know how to, this building's probably out of warranty, but if it were in warranty, they're used to having inspections to make sure that they maintain the warranty of the roof. So I think they have that capability. We don't have it done by just a general contractor, we have it done by a roofer.
I was there. I saw, yeah.
Okay.
I was present when
My
when
colleague
they
was
opened the
there
roof and watched them seal. If your concern is, are those test cuts going to hold up over a year? The answer is yes. They were properly repaired. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Great, thank you. Anybody else have any questions? I have a quick question about the schedule. So just kind of looking at some of the items and the times that are built in, and I think appreciating that it's probably better for all if we're not trying to do a roof replacement as school is starting. Are there areas in the schedule where we could condense timeframes or expedite timeframes to perhaps regain that 60-day window so that we're doing this in the summer as opposed to in the fall when school starts?
There are. In one instance is getting the design team released sooner to get going on their design before, really the steps are we got to get the MSBA board vote, it comes back to city council, or town council, excuse me. So, I talked to my contact at the school department who's no longer here. We kind of outlined like a timeline of the town council and how the vote would go. It was about 45 days that we penciled in. If we can improve that timeline, that's one place you could pick up some time. And then the other is, one option, we could release the architect in advance of the appropriation, on a limited, go ahead with design development and advance the design. It's relatively small amount of money. If you're committed to the project and you have that flexibility, that would be a big help, releasing the design team early.
The other one that jumped out to me was the approval process for the contracts, and so that's built in as a 4-week window. So also just flagging, that's an area where we would be able to expedite the timeline for execution of the paperwork. And then for folks that don't know, because it was helpful for me to understand, this is one of our projects that we're funding through the debt exclusion vote. We had authorized $5 million to do a total of 5 different roof replacements in partnership with the MSBA as part of this program. One thing that folks might not be aware of is that the MSBA requires us to have an appropriation for the full value of the project, as opposed to just the town's share. So in the near future, we will be going to the council to ask for authorization to borrow the amount of money necessary to get to the full project cost for these, but also with the understanding that through the partnership with the MSBA, the town is not actually going to be responsible for that share of the project. We just have to show the MSBA that we have the necessary authorizations in place. And so that's one of the administrative elements that we would have to undertake as part of the timeline that we could also work through and kind of shorten that window of time that's required for that authorization as well. So, and then, Brian, how does it work? So if this gets approved for submission, it's correct that we still have flexibility in making adjustments to the schedule and tightening up the timelines and targeting a summer project as opposed to fall, is that right?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and we will, every opportunity we have to accelerate, and we'll let you know, when we are on a critical path on the schedule, and that, the quicker the turnaround, the better for the overall project. And certainly once we get a contractor on board and getting through, this middle process and figuring out the materials and getting them on order, that's going to be another major, item that's going to let us know what the schedule will be. Yeah.
And is there a difference in cost associated with doing kind of an occupied roof replacement versus an unoccupied? Do you think
No.
that changes the
Not
changes the
necessarily.
pricing?
You may choose to use a fully adhered system versus a fasten, just so you're not drilling into the roof deck while school's in session. We've done that before for schools that are occupied.
Okay.
So there are other ways of doing it, but in that case, it wasn't, the contractor did it for no cost.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
In that case, we couldn't get screws, because that's another issue we've been having right now with supply chain issues, is some of the fasteners are the things that are the hardest thing to get.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to be presumptuous, but I think we would all agree targeting a summer project would be much more efficient for everybody.
Agreed, absolutely, yep.
Okay, great. Councilor Young?
Yeah, the Chief of Staff Taub, excellent point. If it cannot be done over the summer, is there an order of progression on what roofs you're going to be doing? Or is it all of them all at once, like taking all of them off, or will you work in sections? And the reason I'm asking is it's an elementary school, there's drop-off, there's buses in the front. We could possibly change that, but recess is hugely important for elementary school, and this back area is their recess area.
Yep.
So if that, in working with the, principals and school administration, what is the best approach if we do go into the school season?
Yeah.
Or start of school, rather.
There are a lot of different things that we can do. I mean, it's challenging, but we really have to work with the school itself on crafting a plan. I mean, every school has its own challenges. So, we've done instances where we load the roof before drop-off, and then there's no movement on site for a period of time, and then they resume operations for removing debris during certain hours, and then they go quiet again when, there's maybe recess going. We have done that. It's challenging, but it can happen for sure. Yep.
And in total, we're looking about 2 months of construction?
Yeah, but that includes like finished metal, some of the detailing. The major roof operations on Flaherty would probably be closer to 4 weeks. After that, it's it's all the accessories and things that are being resolved at the end.
So ideally, if we could cut 30 days out of the timeline, great, but if we could cut 60, better?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, great. Certainly, yeah, of course.
Chair, how many square feet do you have as far as that have to be shingled?
I can tell you right now. Yeah, so it's 6,600 feet.
6,000?
Mm-hmm.
60 square. Well, if I remember correctly, when I was a kid, I used to pound a square by myself in an hour. My dad could do a square in an hour. So you start getting 20 or 30 people. The rip-off takes about a half hour. You get a big enough crew, you should be able to do that on a Saturday or Sunday and maybe have it into a Monday.
Yeah, well, public construction, you don't, I suppose we could bid it if you want it to be done that way. We could put it in there that the work schedule is weekends. I mean,
And we were using the whole lanyards and fall protection, the whole 9 yards, too.
Yeah,
It was
it's
hand-nailed, not by gun.
yeah. Well, and as we were talking earlier, there may be more than just the rip and put the roof back. We may be doing, insulation, additional sheathing, and so forth. But you're right. I mean, just that roof itself is not a huge part of the time.
I'm just saying the part that I can speak to. My flat roof experience is rather limited.
Right.
Didn't particularly like it.
Yeah. Yeah, the flat roof, they can get about 2,000 square feet a day. But again, we have to plan the schedule for sort of the worst case. We could get a stretch of bad weather, so we kind of plan for, extra. And so the schedule's padded on purpose because, we want to make sure that we're giving you what, could happen so that we can make proper plans now. But of course, at every moment, we'll try and improve it.
Great. Does anybody else have
Thank
any
you, Madam Chair.
questions?
Just something summer program still at Flaherty? Has that already been talked about? So those can be moved well in advance? None.
All right. You want to? We'll go on and talk a little bit about the estimate. So we had the project cost estimated in it. Right now, the straight cost of the work is about $2.1 million overall for the whole project. Just at the time, because we didn't know where the construction estimate was going to end up, we did ask the estimator to include any potentially accessibility upgrades because of the assessed value for the school is relatively low. So we have that number in there. After the direct costs, we have the contractor's overhead. Because of the public construction, we have payment of performance bonds, and we have a design contingency because we're early in the design process. We're only at a very schematic level. It's really words on a page instead of details and drawings. So they covered a 10% contingency in there just because of the uncertainty of the design at this early stage. And then escalation is because of construction materials, we've been hearing about inflation. Well, in construction industry, we describe it as escalation. And we're seeing about 12% a year in construction right now in increases. So we estimate the project from now until the midpoint of construction, and that's why we've carried a 10% escalation for the project. And then the contractor's overhead. So the overall construction project is estimated at $3.4 million. And then we've asked the estimator to break out the roof cost too, just so we could see how each of the areas shook out. But that's the total project right there for construction is the 3.4. In your packet, you have the MSBA form, which is what they call their 3011 budget. It's the total project budget, which includes all the soft and hard costs on the project and contingencies. So the initial phase, which is what we're in now, is feasibility schematic design phase, is that price there, the $73,000, and then to carry the project to the end for the OPM and the designer, we have our fees shown there, and We're carrying some miscellaneous expenses. Those are just for any additional testing we may encounter, some unforeseen materials, or if, additional printing, bidding costs. That's all done in miscellaneous expenses. And then the construction number is the 3.4 that I showed you before. And then on contingencies, we have two. We have one that's the owner's contingency, which covers any soft costs. And then we have a construction contingency that covers any construction unforeseens. So on a renovation project, we recommend 10%. The MSBA only reimburses on 5% of construction. But because of the nature of unforeseen, until you open up the roof, you just don't really know. We think it's prudent if you're going to make an appropriation to carry the 10. And then on soft costs, we're carrying 5%. So overall, when you add all that up, it's just about a $4.4 million project.
And Brian, if you could only, because the chart itself is small, could you talk about what portion of the project budget is eligible for reimbursement?
Sure. So the MSBA has a few limitations in their grant. Number one, on roofing, they cap their participation at $35 a square foot. Right now, the roof is coming in about high 60, I think 67 for this particular project. A few years ago, $35 a square foot would have been a really good number. But because of the escalation that we've been experiencing lately, it seems pretty low. But that's where we're at right now. And we just priced a few projects, and we've verified that the estimator's price is about right. We're awarding projects. The last one I just did was $62 a square foot for an EPDM roof. And then the others are 20% soft cost cap. That's just over, take all the soft cost, divide it by the construction number. And then accessibility upgrades that would be triggered as part of the amount of work we're doing in the building. They don't participate in that at all. And then we've heard just recently your reimbursement rate for this particular year is going to be 50.58. But when you take into consideration all these exclusions that they have for their grant, the effective reimbursement rate, is somewhere between 20 and 26%. The reason I have a range is that on your construction contingencies and your soft cost contingencies, that's subject to their review later. They won't guarantee their grant participation until the end of the project. So there's no way to know until we get to the end. Okay? Does that answer your question? Okay, great. All right. So I think that covers what we wanted to tell you about the project. Do you have any other questions?
Does anybody have any other questions about the Flaherty roof replacement? No. Thank you, Brian, and thank you to the team, and our best to the folks that couldn't be with us this evening for a variety of different reasons. Understanding, I think you're looking, and we can take these one by one, looking for authorization from the building committee to submit the schematic design and existing conditions assessment to the MSBA by the September 1st deadline. There's been a motion made. Is there a second? Motion made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Great, that is unanimous. Thank you very much, Brian. So you're good to go with that. I would just note that we keep in mind those scheduling items that we discussed as we move forward into the process.
And I'm going to assume the same comments apply to this project. It's a very similar schedule and timeline, so we can, to expedite through it, I can move through that to save you the similar issues. So I'm going to turn it right over to Diane to talk about the project scope.
There's a separate book for this. Brian's going to hand that out.
Thank you, Brian.
So the total roof area on this project is 32,557. The building consists of the original 1912 building, which is area A on the diagram, and then the balance of the building is a 1955 addition. Again, the roof was put on in 1992, so it's 30 years old. The construction varies on the two sides. The original has wood deck And the addition has a lightweight perlite concrete deck on forms with bulb tees, but the system that was put on is very similar in both areas, where you have a 3-inch polyiso insulation and, again, a fiber cover board, and then EPDM roofing. All the roofs on this building are flat. I think the only one that's a little bit different, there's a little roof over the front entry that doesn't really show up on this diagram, but that, I think it's uninsulated. I think it's more of a regular concrete deck instead of perlite, but it's a very small area. So we would propose to do the same kind of thing where we'd take off that whole existing system. Again, we are okay from the structural engineer's analysis that the building structure would take the new system. If we remove the old system, put the new system on, it could take it. The new system would be, again, 2 layers of polyiso to get us up to about 5 inches R30, and then some tapered on top of that to make sure we had positive flow to drain. Again, there's some small areas of ponding on the newer building, and those would be addressed again with a little bit of lightweight concrete fill to pull up those low points so that we don't get water sitting there and it makes positive flow to the drains. The older building has a parapet around the top of it, which is of lead-coated copper. That seems to be in fairly good condition. Those kind of flashings can often last a long time. We feel that that could be left in place. The balance of the building in the newer section, it would be treated similar to what we were talking about on the other building with a new metal edge on it. And again, same kind of issues when you raise up that insulation, you raise up the roof vent pipes, the plumbing vent pipes, the curbs on equipment, the blocking at the perimeter of the roof. So in the base flashings, in some cases those base flashings are going to a masonry wall, and we may have to put the reglet into that wall up a little higher. So there'd be a little bit of masonry work to make that cut and make sure that we're tying into there and making a waterproof connection to that wall. This roof does not have good access. There is a roof hatch up on the old building, the A section, which is the highest point of the whole building campus. We think that that's probably a good place to do it. We would like to put a internal fixed ladder instead of using a movable ladder to get to that hatch. It's kind of a long, high ceiling. And I believe the hatch itself is going to be replaced. And then from there on, we'd like to put fixed ladders coming down from that roof to the other roofs, so that once you get up there, you know, if you're doing maintenance or addressing some of the equipment, you could move from roof to roof without having to put up movable ladders around the building. And it would still be secure. We can secure that ladder. I'm not sure if the room itself can be secured, but the one inside. So there is one window over by the gymnasium that's on that G roof that's quite low. We may have to do something with that window to get the sill of it up higher so that we don't have water coming in there if we get a snow and then it rains on it or something like that. So we can get into more detail on that, but it's luckily in one location that would need to be dealt with. There is an abandoned skylight somewhere on the newer section of the building that's been roofed right over, so we want to undo that, take that out, and patch the deck appropriately and have that as the base for our new roofing. So again, on the mechanical side, there are the roof vents, the fanned vents are not in great shape. There's only 2 out of 16 that are a little bit newer. So the other 14, since they have to be taken off, putting on a higher curb anyways, we really recommend that those get replaced, and it will improve the ventilation to the building as well. There is a mechanical unit associated with the kitchen that I think it does cooling, and again, that unit could probably have more life in it, but again, it has the older refrigerants in it, so if not replacing it now, you might want to just have that on the target list in the future. The roof drains also have to be replaced here. Again, they're older, and that would be the drain body and the basket on the top, and raising them up to be at the appropriate level. There are a few areas that require fall protection, again, but it's again, limited areas, just a few spots. I neglected to mention hazardous materials on the previous job, but on both of the projects, there's only a very limited area where caulking, it's not the roofing surface itself or the deck or anything like that. Some of the caulkings that are associated with some of the curbs and some of the base flashings, these can be done within the purview of the roofer. We don't need a special hazmat consultant, and it will not be inside the building where it would expose anybody to that. So, and the order of magnitude is quite small. There are some limited areas. We didn't find any roof deck deterioration either at the wood deck or at the perlite concrete deck. It does look like some areas have gotten a little bit wet from the underside, and there's a little bit of rust on some of the bulb tees and on some of the bar joists. So we may want to take a few more looks around from the underneath side and just see if any painting should be done to that, just to the metal itself. But as far as we know, while we're carrying an allowance for deck repair, we don't see to date any specific areas of deterioration. So there will be an allowance for that potential for deck repair and allowance for any roof perimeter blocking that's may have gotten the bad side of things if there was leaking. That is the main part of. I think most of the other things apply, like I was telling you, raise the base flashings, raise the curbs, raise the vents. So I think, Brian? I didn't know if you had any questions on that, but.
Anybody have any questions? Mr. Alvo?
Test cuts on the roofs.
Yes, again, same general procedure as at the other building.
Okay. But in general, like the last project, you said you have some money for unforeseen conditions. Would it make more sense to do a few more test cuts now to try to minimize? I know you want to totally eliminate unforeseen conditions, but to be
Your suspect areas usually would be, in fact, if you had persistent leakage. You know what I mean? Maybe we could look more at those areas. I don't know if that was factored into where the cuts were taken.
The rusting of the metal deck makes me worry a little bit, like what's going on there. We should probably look into that a little bit more.
Yeah. But I think that, I'm not sure how to answer this question. It's possible that you can take more cuts, but you're just not going to see the whole roof. But if we have particularly suspicious areas, then we could concentrate on that, because it's a pretty good amount of air roof. I just don't think we could cover do the whole thing justice, but we could certainly look at more areas of concern.
Sometimes the unforeseen conditions is once we're into a project and you're working in a particular area, like in this school has a lot of rising walls, so there might be some masonry scope that while we're at it, and we already have a mason involved in the project doing some flashings, it may make sense to go ahead and make some other repairs while we're at it. So really, I say unforeseen, but maybe it's just convenience that we're already there. We have the workforces mobilized. It may make sense while we have the funds available. If the committee approves, we may go ahead and do some of that. That's why we put some of the additional contingency in there, because you'll get some efficiency by combining additional work into the one project. But on the roof deck, it's like we'll put an allowance in for replacement, but you just never know. Sometimes they uncover or they cover things that, in one corner we've checked, but the other corner looks completely different. I've encountered that too. Yes, sometimes you just don't know what others have done in the past. Like Diane described, a skylight that was roofed over. So you can see the bubble of the skylight, but they just ran the roofing over. So you kind of wonder, what else did they cover up? What are we going to find? There might be other holes that, need to be properly filled in that we didn't account for. Okay?
Great,
Yep,
thanks.
sure.
Counselor Hume?
We're fortunate that Tim McDonald is a member of this committee, but also the principal of Hollis. How much involved, and I don't know, Tim, if you want to speak on this, was the principal and maintenance staff involved in this assessment? As you mentioned, there could be leakage. I think, Tim, you may know best on this.
Yeah, we had the facilities department with us during the day. We were there at both schools. I wish I could remember. It's in the report. I know his name's written in there. The name is escaping me, but he knows the schools pretty well, and he was with us the whole day and definitely highlighted to us areas of concern, areas that were leaking. But at this point, we're still very early in the design phase. We will include, others. I know while we were in the beginning of the project, I know there was a change in, the project we were reporting to the school department. Now it's facilities department. So we're in a little bit of a transition. So we'll have much more meetings with the the stakeholders in the project.
Okay. So is your sorry.
And you had the building inspector and/or the ADA coordinator with you on some of the walkthroughs as well.
Yeah, the
right?
ADA coordinator, our project architect, walked the building with the ADA coordinator to go through the building. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So is the plan for here September as well? Tim, you're part of this committee, so
Yeah.
I'd love to hear what you have to say,
At
especially
the moment,
for a
yes.
project timeline in schools and all that. So can you come?
Certainly.
So he is correct. These gentlemen did come to Hollis several times with people from the town, and also with our head custodian was with you as well to go through the areas. I never heard about this skylight, so you don't know what you're going to find in a building that was built in 1912. But I like what you said about doing the repairs when they come up, because typically when things happen at Hollis need to be repaired, more things occur after, As far as timeline, summertime is best. We do have the park department at Hollis. They mostly use the back, the gym area. Our cafeteria was used this summer for the meal program. I'm not sure if that'll be in place next year, but the park department has used the gym area every summer for the last 25 years at least. So that's something to consider if it's done during the summertime. But we're looking forward to having the new roof. We do have several leaks that occur when it's nor'easter, especially. We know where to place the buckets. And so we're looking forward to having a new roof for sure. So thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks.
One more if I can. Don't go away. Is the original part of Hollis historic or no?
Yes, it is, because we
So
received.
how does that play into
Yeah.
this project?
I know it is because we received money years ago when Dr. Kurzberg was here to do some repairs to the original building. There was some vines on it, and if you go to the school, the original portion of the building is to the left, and there's a plaque from the Community Preservation Society there, so I'm not sure how that would play in with your repairs.
Yeah. So as part of this effort, we have to submit a PNF to the Mass Historic Commission for any project that has state funds. So this project will submit that. But because the work that's being done is really not seen, outside of the building, it's all, flat and on the roof, odds are they're not going to have any comments for us. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, great. Turn it back over to you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Principal McDonald.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. All right, so in the report, there's a lot more detail about, the different conditions that we discovered and, areas of concern. So we didn't want to get into too much of that tonight, but what Diane was talking about is all contained in here. And then similar comments as before, these are the MSBA has their grant limitations. Same things apply, the $35 a square foot, accessibility upgrades, and then they have their cap on soft costs too. So that all applies here. So this project is a little bit smaller than the first one we were looking at in terms of the roof cost. So the base cost for the roofing work is $1.6 million. The accessibility, again, we had the estimator just take a look at if we had to do a full compliance, what would that look like for a cost? So he provided a number in the estimate. Right now, we're really, really close to the 30% assessed value. With favorable bids, I think that this won't be an issue. So odds are we can get the number down by not having to do any required upgrades. We can stay focused on the project that we have of the roofing. But for now, for purposes of planning, I think it's better to go forward with the full number, knowing that we'll do everything in our power to get that down so that you can use the funds that you have. You have limited funds that we'll work to that. Okay. So when we prepare the bid and structure the drawings, we'll make sure that we have a way that we can tailor the scope to fit in with your available funds. Okay. So similar setup. There's a 3011 budget, which is the MSBA form. It's that really small thing there, which I've simplified into the left side of this slide. Feasibility schematic. That's our contracts with BWA and PCA 360 so far. And then for the owner's project manager, we provide a full-time clerk. While any work is going on, we have somebody here on site to oversee the work. And then the other half of the soft costs is the design services. And we carry the same similar miscellaneous expenses, some testing, some printing. We like to do electronic bidding for the project, so there's some cost there. So we carry an allowance for that. Again, we don't ever expect to use all of it, but it's better for us and for you for planning when you do an appropriation to do it once and make sure that we have it all covered. And then the construction number that we had talked about, and then contingencies. It's the same 10% and the 5%. Okay? And I'll turn it over to any questions that you might have.
Does anybody have any questions? No? Okay. And so this submission follows the same track as that for Flaherty. So we would be looking for authorization to submit to the MSBA by the September 1st deadline, the existing conditions and schematic design for the roof replacement at Hollis. Okay. There's been a motion made. Is there a second? Second. Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Great. Thank you
Great.
very much.
Thanks very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Have a good night. Okay, so moving back up on the agenda to the South Middle School update, I think that Hill gave Doug Murray a little bit of time off this week, so we are joined this evening by Mike Carroll.
Hi there. I just have to get this connected up there. I'm not seeing, it says File Explorer, go to X click share.
Are you plugged into anything?
I've got the little,
Let me take a look.
it wasn't there. I just reset it. and
I had to walk up.
I had to, yeah. There you go. Ready to share.
There we go.
There we go. All right. So
Like Nicole mentioned, Doug is on vacation. He's actually taking his son back to school, so he's driving across country as we speak. We're going to do a quick review tonight, general overall project review, including a little bit of an update on the schedule. We have some information from the MSBA that we're going to share, and then review a little bit about the process on the budget and how we want to proceed with the budget on that. And then we'll do an overall financial review, showing you what commitments we have, what budget adjustments we're looking for, what invoices we've received. We also thought it might be a good time to revisit the process with change order and commitment approvals, where previously Ed Cronin was the one that was authorized to do that. With Sarah taking over for Ed, we thought it would be worthwhile just to have a refresher on that and allow everybody to understand where we're going with that. And then we'll kind of open to questions as we go here. So, all right. I'm going to start with the overall project review. So this is in your packet as well. But we've got the overall dashboard here. And up in the top left-hand corner is project accomplishments that we've done this month, as well as the project accomplishments we're looking to do over the next 30 days, the next month. Next to that is the current issues. We've got a couple of photographs of the site, of the progress we're making. We've got the general overall schedule, milestone schedule, kind of in the lower middle there. And then we've got the financials across the bottom. We also are showing our diversity compliance, which is a requirement for the design team as well as the contractor to have minority business enterprise and women business enterprises represented as subcontractors for them. So in general, what's happening on the construction right now, the structural steel is being finished up and detailed. So you see the structure up there, but now they're going back and tying up all the loose ends, doing welds, moment connections, bolts, things of that nature. At the same time, slabs are going in, concrete slabs, and those are going in on the slab on deck mostly first, while we're doing a little bit of underground work. In the lower levels, we're getting underground plumbing, underground electric, things of that nature, and slab on grade is going to be going in soon. Another big milestone that we're working towards is the east parking, what we call the east parking lot, which is the main parking lot for the existing building. We've fully removed that parking lot, and we're in the process of repaving that, and that's going to happen over the next week or so here. We're going to have the new asphalt down so that when the staff and when the students are coming back, that parking lot will be redone, which anybody who's driven through that will be appreciative of what we're going to be getting there. We've continued to work with Damon Rainey in coordination with him as far as the construction goes, and with the understanding that we're going to start seeing some more activities at the existing school, with staff starting to come back, with parent and student orientations coming up, and we've made sure we've coordinated that. Once school does start, once basically Labor Day comes, we're going to start doing the gates closed at bus drop-off and pickup again. We've kind of allowed that to relax over the summer because we didn't have that bus drop-off and pickup. But in general, construction's on schedule. We're still moving towards that completion date. We're watching closely long lead items. We're also trying to watch closely items that are having supply chain issues. We've been kind of keeping a list of that, and so far we've been able to manage through that. Part of that is by ordering things maybe a little bit earlier than you would on a typical job 5 years ago, before COVID, that type of thing. So you may have heard the words lean construction before. Lean was kind of get it here when you need it. We've kind of said we're going to put lean construction aside. We're going to get it here as soon as we can get it, and we'll store it if we need to, because we want to make sure that we have what we need to be able to finish the building, basically.
Can I just ask you, Mike, has Bacon been cooperative in that theory, and any pushback or any concerns from them about kind of making sure that materials are getting ordered in advance of when they might traditionally order them?
I think overall they've been really good with everything. We've been working through that as a team. There's a couple of small items that I'm going to say maybe a subcontractor pushing to Bacon and then Bacon asking us, but again, they've been very, very cooperative with us, and we haven't had anything that, to my knowledge, I can't think of anything that we said we have to change this item because the specified item is going to take too long to get here or because we can't get it. So we've been able to work through that. All right. Before I leave the overall project update, one thing I was going to maybe suggest for the next meeting, and I know we'll be talking about the meetings at the end, is I think it would be great to maybe have a site visit for everybody to kind of come out and see what's going on out there, maybe in the near future. So just something to think about. I know we'll be talking about the next meeting, where we have the meetings later in the evenings. This time of year, you still have daylight, where you wait till the fall or the winter, and then you don't, but something to think about. Any other questions about the project, the progress going on, or anything like that?
Any members of the committee have any questions?
No? Yeah. So we do have a couple of updates here from the MSBA, and again, these are in your package. I'm just trying to make them large enough that you can see them. The first and foremost was the revised project funding agreement. So if everybody remembers, we go through a feasibility and then a schematic design, and we sign our funding agreement with the MSBA at that point. And typically, on most projects, and I assume this project will follow that standard, there's only one time that funding agreement really gets updated other than minor change orders. And that's really when the contractor's contract is awarded. Rather than putting the estimated value in for the construction, which is the single largest number, you actually put the construction value in and you get that adjusted. So that's what this letter is the cover for the package that was sent to us. So we bid our project in December, we awarded it at the end of December, and the good news was our award was under budget, so we were able to work towards that. Now, the expectation typically, actually the ARP people were just mentioning your reimbursement rate is 50.58. There's some different bonus points in there and things like that with a full project like we have with renovations and stuff like that. But roughly, it's about a 50-50 split. So when we had project savings, you expect maybe half that savings might go away, but the savings were in areas where we may have already been above a cap, or we may have already had exclusions to it. So this letter has a lot of information in it, and it has the 3011 form, which you saw that same form with the ARP a few minutes ago. I'm going to kind of do the same thing that my predecessors did here and show you basically a cheat sheet at the end. So this is the bottom of the 3011. So if I just scroll back up here just for a minute, this is the 3011. This is where the signatures are. And right above that, this is kind of your summary at the bottom of the sheet right here. And if I scroll back down, so the summary on the left is the initial PFA, project funding agreement, that we signed at the end of schematic, and the budget on the right is the updated PFA that they've sent to us executed. And what you'll notice here is the highlight here is the estimated facilities grant went from $30,997,000 to $30,967,000. So it went down about $30,000. So even though we had about a $2 million savings on bid day, they didn't take $1 million back, they took $30,000 back. So that means most of the savings we saw on bid day are town savings. So that's the really good news there. Not only did we have savings, but we had town savings. In general, we did this at East. There's kind of three ways you can take those savings. The first way is you keep the initial budget that we originally had. So in other words, you don't take any savings at all, you keep it all in there. The MSBA has already reduced their grant by the $30,000, so the extra money that we would be saving would be potentially town funds that you would be doing there. Now, just like you were mentioning a few minutes ago, Nicole, on the roof projects, the town voted for the full value, so you've got the value available, but it's just increasing the town share with that. The second option would be to keep the initial contingency locked and not add anything in. That would be taking a ultra-conservative approach and maybe giving yourself a little more risk there, if you will. The third approach is actually in line with what the PFA is and what the MSBA has recommended, and that's actually what we're recommending. What we do there is you have the estimated grant from the MSBA, you have the town share here, and that basically gets us an adjusted budget value of 85.193 compared to the 86.6 that we had initially. And what that does is it allows us to add money to our contingency, the current contingency, and have a project savings initially found here now. Now, one of the things I try and do as we're doing budgets, I never tell you to take money off of a line, and then if I ever think there's a chance, I have to add money back to it. So I'm pretty confident right now with the contingency we already have and adding the extra 1.1 in there that we would be able to take that savings. Now, something were to happen down the line, you always have that money that you could go back in there, but I'm telling you that I feel comfortable with the 1.1 to take that savings now. And it's going to be there in the back pocket if you need it, but I would make a recommendation of moving forward with the project budget at 85.2 and make that the target goal that we would be moving forward with.
Does anybody have any questions for Mike about those three options or the recommendation to take option 3? Mike, do you need a vote?
I think it would be good to have a vote on that, yeah, just to approve, basically, I would make a recommendation to approve option 3, which is in line with the project funding agreement and would provide some savings to the town while still keeping a healthy contingency.
Okay.
Second for discussion.
Second for discussion.
Tell me those totals again you have.
Which total?
So what the contingency was, our 30% savings to the town, but the totals we're looking to vote on.
So the current contingency before we make any adjustments right now, and I'm actually jumping to the dashboard sheet, the initial contingency was 4.8 million, 4,877,290. We've spent $377,000 of that to date. So your current contingency is 4,499,751. And what option 3 would do is provide an additional almost 1.2 million to that 4.5 that you have right now.
Any further discussion? Okay, so there's been a motion made to accept option 3 and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that is unanimous. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everybody.
Just so I can write it, that was Tom made the motion and Shannon made the second.
And Counselor Hume seconded for discussion.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. So those are just the backups of the 3011. In case anybody's looking for it, you have this in your package as well. If you're interested, I actually highlighted where the changes were, where the money actually adjusted, and it was mostly in the construction value, basically. There was also a slight adjustment on the contingency line. The other item we had from the MSBA, and Hill is actually finding this on all of our projects right now, is they've asked us to submit to them what our initial estimates were for each of the filed sub-trades, as well as the general contractor, and then what the bids actually came in. I think what they're seeing is that there's been a sharp uptick in costs, and even though estimates are taking escalation and contingencies into account, they're still seeing that bids are coming in right at the estimates or even sometimes over them. So I think they're trying to gather information so that they can understand it a little bit better. You know, they're very good at getting all that information together. So we've actually just submitted it back to them this morning on that. So they asked us to get that information, and it's basically all the information that we've already submitted to them, but it's just pulling it out of a big thick packet and giving it more direct.
Certainly.
Does that make sound like that MSB is going to look at these things and perhaps reimburse us more based on what's happening economically versus some of the...
Probably not on this project, but possibly on future projects. I think that's what, what I'm looking at, the big number is there's a limit on the cost per square foot, just like we were just saying the cost per square foot of the roofing. And that cost per square foot, that maximum, is governed by the legislature. There's a maximum amount they can raise it every year. I think it's 3% or 3.5%. And they can't go any more than that unless they actually voted into law, like a revision of the law or a new law. So I think they're looking at that. That's the single biggest one that when we did East, our 58% reimbursement translated to an actual reimbursement of about 50%. Now at South, our 52% reimbursement is actually closer to 35 to 40%. It's just because that cost cap hasn't kept up with inflation and with the market.
I think the roofs are a great example. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Devon.
All right. All right, so I thought I'd go through the current updates and the current budgets in commitments and budget adjustments and invoices first, and then we'd maybe talk about the whole process after that, if that works.
Great.
So under commitments, we have two change orders from Bacon Construction, and they both incorporate a number of PCOs, which are potential change orders, and you'll be hearing me talk about that in a little bit, so remember those two words. But change order number 1 has already been signed, and we're asking for a vote of acknowledgement for that. It was signed for $97,261.31. And I'm happy to answer any questions or any comments that anybody has on any of the particulars there, or again, hopefully everybody got this package and was able to kind of thumb through it a little bit before the meeting.
Anybody have any questions about change order number 1? No? So based on the process that we've enacted, we would be looking for a motion to acknowledge change order number 1 in the amount of $97,261.31. There's been a motion made by Mr. Avil. Is there a second? Seconded by Counselor Hume. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Great. Thank you. That is unanimous.
All right, so the next one we have is owner change order number 2. And typically what we're going to be trying to do here going forward is probably every meeting once a month, we're going to be having a change order that we'll be bringing forward if there is anything to be done. But I think we're just doing a little bit of catch up. That's why we have 2 this time. That second one exceeds $100,000. It's for $229,911.78. The single biggest part of that is actually that parking lot that we were talking about a little bit earlier. And that's about 3/4 of that. It's about $155,000 of it. But that is something that we'd like to have a vote to approve that so that we can move that forward and get that executed. Again, that has about 8 or 9 items on there. There's various smaller items in there.
Any questions from the committee? Counselor Hume.
What's driving the paving change, the 154?
The 154, so the original contract called for us to just overlay that existing parking lot, the east parking lot, the existing parking lot by the existing South School. When we went out there and started looking at it, there was a lot of potholes, a lot of areas where there wasn't even asphalt. It was just dirt at that point, where larger pothole areas. We also looked at some of the bushes, for example, on the right side, had kind of reclaimed some of that asphalt area, so we were opening that back up, regrading it all, and to have proper drainage and basically redoing the whole thing. So we're doing full depth asphalt. One of the big benefits with that is we're doing new asphalt this year, and then we let it set for the whole winter, and we let buses drive on it and cars drive on it and everything, and if there's any deformations, any sort of potholes or anything like that, we can repair those, and then next spring we'll be doing a new top course on that, so you can have a brand new parking lot there. It just made sense with all the other parking going to be brand new to have that all complete.
So basically redoing what was there because it was not good enough to add on to?
It is, and actually it was
simplistic
something
terms?
it was something that we had thought about doing early on, and I think if you go back to the very early we had it in there, but then when we were starting to worry about cost, that was one of the value engineering items that we had considered taking. But when we had the bid savings, we thought this was something that was probably something that you really didn't want to give, but we did at the time, and we thought it was a good opportunity to get it back.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly.
I think it's important that people realize that parking lot, I don't think it was ever put in correctly. I don't believe he had the proper substrate. I believe it just, they did the best they possibly could back in the day, and they've been, shall we say, exacerbating the problems by not putting a proper foundation, not grading it correctly, not putting the proper drainage in. So you can put the best topping on, put the topping on top, but it'll wind up failing based on the fact that you do not have a quality substrate in order to put what you said, almost like a binder coat down, which I believe is the best way to put it, and then put a topping coat on it in 12 months. So what we're doing, we're fixing a mistake from many years ago. But in doing so, we'll ensure that it lasts longer. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Devon. Any other questions about change order number 2? There's been a motion to approve change order number 2 in the amount of $229,911.78. Is there a second? I'll second. There's been a motion made and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And that is unanimous. Thank you.
All right, as part of that process, we started looking at the contingencies, and what we had talked about previously is this sheet that you have in front of you on your package and on the screen. We're not showing you all the previous commitments, we're only showing you the ones from this period. What had happened in the past is we were showing individual PCOs, which is potential change orders, so each one of those little parts and pieces. But we're not changing the contract by a PCO, we're changing it by a change order. So what I decided to do is, one time for this middle section for the budget adjustments, I wanted to show you the prior modifications and then the current modifications, just to kind of reset the slate here so that we know exactly where we are moving forward. And then going forward, every meeting after this, we're only going to show the updates, basically. But I just wanted to show you. So in reality, we had not made any adjustments overall to the hard costs, which is the construction contractors' values. We had made adjustments to the soft costs and in the prior modifications. So those are ones that we voted on in the past and we've accepted in the past. But basically, if there's any questions, again, I'd be happy to answer that. But what we've done through that process there is we've actually taken about $50,000 of the soft cost contingency and spent it in various locations. With these two change orders, we're now taking $97,000 and $229,000 from the hard cost contingency, and that's adjusting that down. Based off the vote we just did a few minutes ago, we're going to basically be adding about 1.2 back into those two categories. It's going to be mostly into the hard cost one because that's where the savings was. Or I shouldn't say mostly, it'll be all in the hard cost one because that's where the savings was. So we'll show that on the revisions next time. And what will happen there is typically we're going to have a budget reduction and then we add it up at the bottom. But we're actually going to take the full $2 million and we're only going to add 1.1 to the contingency so you can have a net adjustment to your total cost.
Great. Thank you.
And then invoices this period, the invoices, we've got 2 from Millinery Spears, which is our design team. That was for June and July. You've got Hill International for July, and then you've got the Bacon application number 7. And again, we've supplied the full backup for all those in your packages as well.
Great. And we also have with us this evening Brian Pace from MDS. Thank you for joining us this evening, Brian.
So on those, again, we'll be talking about this in a minute, but they're within budget, they're within the contract allowance alignment, and we've made recommendations for those. So if we want to take an acknowledgement there, we can, but I don't know that we have to.
I think the practice of this body has been to acknowledge or approve change orders.
Yes.
So as long as those invoices are still within the budget and project costs, I think, unless anybody disagrees, just the presentation on those amounts is sufficient.
Okay.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right. So last but not least on this update for South is to talk a little bit about the process to approve commitments and invoices. And this is going to look very daunting on the screen, but I had a very similar committee recently, and they asked me to do a workflow. So sorry, I'm just going through all. Here's the workflow. So it's pretty in-depth. Thought I might just walk you through real quick the green line, which is kind of the way we should be doing it, or the green and the red. This is basically in line with what we had previously done with Ed Cronin, and this is what I'm going to be recommending to go move forward. So the financial director receives a new commitment. So that could be a contract, it could be a purchase order, it could be a change order. And the first thing they should look at is there a cover sheet from Hill making a recommendation? And that cover sheet also provides the propay costs and a lot of information. So if that's no, then it kind of gets kicked back to Hill. But if it's a yes, we're going to move along this line. We're going to come down here. And that question is, has Hill confirmed the 3 criteria? So what we had talked about before is that Hill recommends moving forward with that change or that commitment or that purchase order, that the value is under $100,000, and that the request is within the overall project budget. So if any one of those are not met, then we go a different path. But if all 3 of those are met, we'd continue down this green path here. And it would go to the finance director. And right now, that was Ed, that's going to be Sarah, or that is Sarah moving forward. So that would go to Sarah. She would review it, and if she finds it acceptable, she would sign it and return it to Hill. We would then take it and bring it to the town and have the town office executed. So the one thing there is, rather than her returning to Hill, it might be that she signs it and sends it to Town Hall direct. It could be really either way, but the other town that I was dealing with, they wanted us to bring it to Town Hall, so that's why I did it. So, and then once we get that, it's released. It's under the $100,000. So I believe right now the town has the treasurer signing off on it, and town council signing off on it, and then the chief of staff, which we get 2 for 1 there.
2 for 1.
And then the mayor. So the only other scenario that I mean, and again, I can review all of these. If Hill hasn't confirmed all 3, and let's just say that we did confirm, we recommended it, we are within the budget, but it exceeds the $100,000. What happens then is, if it exceeds the $100,000, we go to here, and Sarah still reviews it. And if she finds it acceptable to bring to committee, then it comes to committee, basically. And so she returns it to us, tells us to put it on the agenda for the next building committee meeting. We do that, we bring it here, and we vote for it to be approved. And then once it's approved, Sarah could then sign it, and then same process, pass it along. So that's pretty much what we had done before. That's what we're recommending to stick with. We've had some discussions internally with Sarah and with Mike. We're going to be working together with them to do the PCO review. This is all change order review. The heavy lifting actually happens while we're approving the PCOs, the individual items. So we're reviewing labor rates, we're reviewing hours and costs and dollars and cents and markups and all that stuff during the PCO process. Ultimately, those get signed off individually. Those are signed by Brian as the designer. They're signed by the contractor, Bacon. They're signed by Hill, and then they'd be signed by Sarah. And then ultimately, the change order has those same signatures, but Hill is out of the loop on that one because technically the architect is the ultimate interpreter of the contract document. So if there's a change to it, they're the ones that are signing off, kind of for the Hill NDS team, basically.
And the Mike that you mentioned, that's not you in that process, that's Mike McGurty?
Mike McGurty, yes, sorry. Yeah, so Mike McGurty has taken over for Ed as far as meeting. We do weekly meetings Tuesday mornings. I'll be at it tomorrow with the contractor, with the design team, and with Hill. And Mike McGurty is there as the town's representative, as the facilities manager. So he's there listening in on all those weekly meetings. So we're going to be having an additional PCO review meeting, basically, and it's going to be with Sarah and Mike separately. And it gives us an opportunity to kind of do that, walk them around the site, let them see what's going on. Here's the change orders that are coming up down the line. Here's something that might be coming up, but we're trying to work out the details just so that when it comes to both of them, if there is a change order, it's not the first time you're saying it.
Great. And just always looking for efficiencies. I don't think anything signed has to go back to Hill just to come to the town. So Sarah, you can certainly feel free to send those directly to me, and then we can round them out and send them back to Hill.
Yeah. All right.
Does anybody have any questions about kind of the approval workflow? Certainly, Mr. Devon.
Advantageous for all parties included in that We've got more than a few sets of eyes on this. Look, we know that in past projects, we've had to, shall we say, for lack of a term, push things through. Some of them, weren't as pleasant as they could have been. I think it's important that we do have Representative Mr. McCurdy. Let's face it, if he's going to be maintaining the building, he should see how it's put up. And if he has any, shall we say, issues, be able to sit in a job meeting and bring those up. I like the fact that he'll work with our new finance person to try and explain that. I mean, do you have a background? You do have a background contracts like this in the past? Construction contracts? So he's going to help you. It's going to get you up to speed. So, making my point, I see where this helps us quite a bit. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Devon. And so I think the last time we approved this process, and specifically the $100,000 threshold, we approved it as to Mr. Cronin specifically. So we would be looking for a vote of this body to authorize Sarah Kaufman to approve change orders in an amount not to exceed $100,000 following the process presented, with anything above that amount being brought to the full committee for authorization. Oh, there's been a motion made by, and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Great. Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Kaufman, for being here this evening as well.
All right, so I think that's all I have, unless there's any other questions.
Anybody have any questions? I know one thing we had talked about, Mike, was setting up and for members of this committee to join us on August 30th, right? Around 11 a.m. on the site for a barbecue lunch. We're going to be recognizing the folks that have been working incredibly hard on the site and inviting all the site work folks and representatives from Bacon and from Hill and the members of this committee to join us all for a lunch and just acknowledge all the incredible work they've been doing out there this summer. So, for this committee to mark their calendars. Okay, so thank you very much, Mike, if there are no other questions. And next item is community questions. We do have some folks with us today. We heard from Principal McDonald earlier. We also have Principal Sheehan with us from East. Very nice to see you. I don't see any members of the public, so we can move right along to our next meeting. I do think that's a great idea while we still have sunlight into the evening hours to hold our September meeting on site at South Middle School. Principal Rainey's not with us this evening, so we'll just have to double check schedules with him. But looking at perhaps Monday, September 19th. And I'm going to suggest 5:30 because we are meeting at South, and that should still give us plenty of sunlight. Does the school committee meet that evening? Okay, perfect. Monday, September 19th at 5:30 at South, which reminds me, of course, to thank Wes Ray and Jerry Comack, who are here with us this evening from BCAM. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for broadcasting for those to participate. We'll have to see if we can find a way to stream from South when we're there next month, but just in case, I would encourage anybody who's interested in checking out the progress and doing a site walk to join us at our September meeting. And that brings us to the end of our 5:30. We'll do 5:30 next month.
So we'll start with the site walk and then do the meeting, or?
I think we would probably do the meeting first, and then we would do the site walk. Okay, and so with that, is there a motion to adjourn? It's been a motion made. Is there a second? All those in favor? Aye. Great. Have a great evening, everybody. Thank you.